Regnum Online, or Champions of Regnum, how it is called now, is a realm vs. realm focused MMORPG by the Argentinian developer NGE, previously known as NGD Studios. The focus of the game is very clearly on the PvP. The PvE, on the other hand, is unfortunately seriously lacking. The whole concept of the three realms is actually done pretty well. Certis, Ignis and Alcius have relatable motives why they fight each other, and the environments of the three realms are quite distinguishable. In Certis you will experience some beautiful flora and fauna, Ignis mostly consists of deserts and rocks, and Alcius is the snowy place. Every realm has a starting zone where new players can learn the basics of the game. Then there's the inner realms, which are the safe zones for the slightly more experienced players, but they can theoretically also be raided by one of the other realms. The last areas are the war zones, where open PvP takes place. Every realm has two smaller castles and one big stronghold. If one of the factions captures all the castles of one of the others, then they can attack their wall and try to invade the inner realms of the attacked faction. Every realm also got an individual dragon which can assist them during an invasion. The invasions and sieges of the realms are truly the highlight of the game and something you can only experience in a few other games. The concept of the three realms was implemented well, but the quests are usually extremely basic and by the textbook. The presentation in general is quite lacking. There are no cutscenes at the beginning or during the game whatsoever, no dialogue in the game is actually spoken, and most quests are simple fetch quests. I've heard from some people that after around level 30 you must mostly grind and do daily quests if you want to keep leveling up to the maximum level of 60. Some people even described it as grind hell. You can of course also participate in the realm vs. realm battles, but you're probably going to have a tough time before you get at least to level 50. Potentially players could also use boosters to level up faster, but that's like saying doping is required to improve in a halfway acceptable time. The graphics of the game are also rather simple in comparison to the competition. Since I first played the game in around 2007-2008, the graphics have become noticeably better. The developer implemented a new graphic engine in 2009, and PC graphic cards have of course also improved significantly since back then. However, Regnum is still one of the uglier MMOs. Lord of the Rings Online and Dungeons & Dragons Online are the closest games if comparing the visual style. Gameplay wise, Regnum resembles more something like Dark Age of Camelot or Warhammer Online. The soundtrack for the most part is alright, and occasionally even quite atmospheric, but there are unfortunately also a few glitches in this area. After I finished combat and put my weapon away, I could often hear the fighting soundtrack playing on further 20 to 30 seconds, and in some areas there was no music or sound effects at all. These are not the only glitches in the game. I experienced multiple enemies and quest targets being in the wrong places and so on. The world map itself is smaller than in other games, but the world is at least mostly filled with useful things, and the war zones are at least some kind of compensation for the rather small map. The environments and the buildings within Champions of Regnum fit the mood of the game and are mostly even quite decent looking. Another complaint of mine would be the combat. It's not entirely awful, but it can definitely feel clunky and awkward sometimes. It's pretty slow and unexciting tap target combat system, and it just isn't anything to write home about. Since combat is an important aspect of any RPG, I felt disappointed. Two quite unique aspects about this game are for one that you can at all times reset the entirety of your skill points, which is quite nice if you have misskilled a little, and the other thing is that practically no mob in this game acts hostile towards the player. Whether you like the last characteristic of course varies from player to player. What I really didn't like was that there is no ability to swim in this game. When you enter the high waters, you just immediately die, without a real drowning animation. One other cardinal sin I still want to mention is that you can only buy a mount with real money. For many people that might not be a big issue, but I find it unacceptable. The game is actually more pay to convenience than pay to win, but the massive grinds certainly seem to promote items from the in-game shop. Generally you can say that the game unfortunately didn't really get the support from the developers it deserved. A lot of the bugs should have been fixed and the PvE been improved, but since a couple of years, nothing significant seems to be happening anymore. There's still a pretty small but loyal community for this game. When I last played in 2018, there were still 3 global servers. The Spanish, or rather Argentinian, RA server, which was by far the most populated, and the 2 smaller servers of Valhalla and Haven, which had barely any players. In 2023, however, there's only RA left, which means you are a lot more likely to meet other players. You should however be aware that this is now a multilingual server. There are certain things that I really like about this game. The realm vs. realm concept, the lore and environments, but the idea of playing through relatively uninteresting PvE on hours upon hours of nonsensical grinding is destroying any kind of motivation to get to the late game for me. and that is a bit of a shame, since I can see the potential the game had. At the end of the day, I still don't give a lower rating than 5 out of 10, since I can see determined people with friends having a good time in the late game and in the battles in the war zone. In this sense, thanks for watching the video, and I hope to see you in the next one.